everyone. So today's lecture will be on correction of errors in suspense account. So this chapter is all about mistakes done while recording business transactions in accounting and how to correct them. So it's very crucial that we identify the types of errors and how to deal with them. Okay, so basically we have two categories of errors. Category A, I would call it errors which do not affect the trial balance. So what this actually means is that the errors happen, but the trial balance can still balance. So falling back to what I told you in the past, just because the trial balance balances, it does not mean that everything is correct. So you can have errors happening within the trial balance, which will still cause the trial balance showing the same total, trial balance able to balance. Okay, then the next category of error is where these kind of errors would cause the trial balance not to balance. So now we will look at category A for the moment. So under category A, we've got to know 7 kinds of errors. So as a student, you need to identify the type of error. You need to be able to recognize them, remember the name, and how to correct them. So let's get on with it. So under category A, as I've mentioned, these errors do not affect the balancing of the trial balance. So the first error is error of omission. So error of omission is where we have completely left out a transaction. We did not record a particular transaction. We did not debit and credit for that transaction. So example, here we have a transaction sale of goods of $60 to J. George has been completely omitted from the books. So this means that we were supposed to debit J. George $60 and credit the sales account $60, but we did not do so. So to correct these errors, we just record it the usual way that we should do. So therefore, we should debit J. George 60 and credit sales 60. Okay, the second error is called error of commission. So an error of commission is where an entry was made in the wrong account, but within the same class of accounts. So for example, if you talk about trade receivables, you've got many names, you've got many people. So all these many customers fall under the same class of account, which is trade receivable. So if supposing we have sold on credit to a particular person and we debited the wrong person, then we have made an error of commission. So here example, a sale of $60 goods to B. Boyle has been debited into C. Boyle's account. So B. Boyle and C. Boyle are two different individuals. The correct person that we should have debited the $60 to is B. Boyle. But instead we debited C. Boyle instead. So the correction has to be made between C. Boyle and B. Boyle. Hence, we need to remove the amount from C. Boyle. So we need to credit C. Boyle $60 and debit B. Boyle $60. Now, a very important point in this chapter is whatever the question does not mention about is always assumed to be correct. So for instance, in this example, nothing was mentioned about the sales account. It means that we have correctly credited the sales account. So we do not have to focus on that. We only focus on what is being mentioned. Do not focus on what is not mentioned. Okay. So error of principle. So error of principle is where we have entered a transaction into the wrong account in the wrong class. Okay. So the difference between error of principle and error of commission earlier, error of commission is wrong account within the same class, but error of principle is wrong account in a different class of account. So for example, a repair of motor vehicle of $50 is debited into motor vehicle account. Now, when we repair motor vehicles, we are not adding value to motor vehicles. Hence, it's a revenue expenditure. So this $50 should have been debited to repair expense, but it has wrongly been debited into motor vehicle account, indicating that it's a capital expenditure. So this is wrong, because if we debit an expense into an asset, which means that amount has to be depreciated. So in this case, this is merely an expense. So the correction is between the repair account and the motor vehicle account. So since we have wrongly debited $50 into motor vehicle account, so we need to remove it from the motor vehicle account. So hence we need to credit motor vehicle and debit repair for 50. So we debit repair to put it back into expenses, and we credit motor vehicle to remove it from the asset. Okay. So next we go on to compensating error. So compensating error happens when errors cancel out each other, right? So for example, in this example, both the sales and the purchase account have been overcast by 100. So sales is a revenue, it's a credit balance account. Purchase is like a cost, it's a debit balance account. So this means here that sales have been over credited by 100 and purchases have been over debited by 100. So we need to reduce 100 from sales and purchase. Hence, we need to debit sales and credit purchases for 100, 100. We need to debit sales account by 100 and credit the purchase account for 100. Okay, next we have error in original entry. So this means the original figure and the figure that we recorded are two different figures. So simply to say that when we have made an error in original entry, the amount, the transaction that we recorded the amount for does not follow the amount in the business document. So example, a sale of $150 goods to E. Allen were entered as 130 in both the sales account and Allen's account. So this simply means that instead of debiting Allen 150 and crediting sales 150, we made a mistake by debiting Allen 130 and crediting sales 130. So which means we have understated the amount on the debit and the credit side by $20. So which means we need to increase the amount owed to Allen and increase the sale. So hence, the correction for this is to debit E. Allen $20 and credit sales $20. Okay, next we have error in double entry, also known as error of complete reversal. So this error is where the double entry itself is inverted. Okay, so for example, a check payment of $50 to D. William has been entered in the credit side of D. William's account and debit side of the bank account. So the correct entry should have been to debit D. William and to credit bank account. So since we have made an error of complete reversal, we have wrongly debited the bank account and credited D. William. So to correct this, we need to write the double entry the usual way, but double the amount. So why double the amount? Because we need to debit William 50 and credit bank 50 to undo the wrong entry that we have made. And then we need to repeat. We need to debit William another 50 and credit bank another 50. So in total, we have debited William for 100 and credited bank for 100. Okay, lastly, we have a transposition error. So a transposition error is made when the wrong sequence of the individual characters within a number was entered. So for example, here, a sales of 124 to E. Allen has been entered as 142 in both the accounts. So 124 was recorded as 142. So that makes it a different value altogether. So in this example, we were supposed to debit Ellen 124 and credit sales 124, but we wrongly debited Ellen 142 and credited sales 142. So hence we have overstated the amount by $18. So we need to reduce the $18. We need to reduce sales by $18 and reduce Ellen by $18. Hence, the correcting double entry would be to debit sales 18 and to credit Ellen 18. Okay, so category B is about errors which affect the trial balance. So whenever a trial balance is unable to balance, does not balance, we need to temporarily balance it by inserting a suspense amount, an amount into an account called a suspense account to the lesser side of the trial balance, to the lesser total. So I'll walk you through this now. So if you look at this example here, this trial balance shows a debit amount of 1,000 and a credit amount of 1,077. So the lesser total being on the debit side. So we need to open up a suspense account and put the difference, add on the difference to the lesser side to make it equal, to make the totals equal temporarily. Okay, then we need to locate the errors. Now, in an exam question, the errors will be given to you, so you need to perform the double entry in such a way that the debit balance of 77 eventually becomes a zero balance. Okay, here's an example. So falling back to this trial balance. So the trial balance shows a difference of 77. Now, these are the errors given to us, the ones in red colored font. So the first error is a check of $150 paid to L. Kent had been correctly entered in the cash book. So when they say this had been correctly entered in the cash book, it simply means that we have correctly credited the cash book because we are paying a check. So that's for you to figure out. Okay. So we have correctly credited the bank account, but we did not debit L. Kent. So to correct this, we need to debit L. Kent 150 because we did not do so, and credit suspense 150. So in the T account format, it will appear like this. So the original difference was 77 on the debit side. And since we have credited suspense 150, so we have a 150 on the credit side. Okay. So the second error is the purchase account had been undercast by 20. So purchase is a debit balance account. So if purchases have been undercast by 20, it means we need to debit a further 20 to the purchase account to correct the situation. So we debit purchase account 20 and we credit the suspense account by 20. So following through, when you enter this, since you are crediting the suspense account, so you'll enter 20 on the credit side of the suspense account. And the last error is a check of $93 received from KSAN had been correctly entered in the cash book. Now, we have received a check. So it is for you to know that we should debit the bank column of the cash book, which we did correctly. So we have debited bank, but we did not credit SAN's account. So to correct the situation, we need to credit SAN 93 because we did not do so, and debit suspense 93. So putting this into the account, so since we're debiting suspense of 93, so once all this has been entered and we total up the suspense account shows two totals which are of same value. So indicating that there is no more balance. So this is what we need to achieve. We have to achieve obtaining a balance carried down of 0 in the suspense account. Only then have we located all the errors correctly. Okay, lastly, we have this section where question will ask you the effect of errors on profit. So what affects profit is if we have made errors in either the revenue or the expense account. If you have made errors in assets or liability or capital account, those would not affect profit. So you have to be careful in selecting which are the revenue or expense account that you need to take into account. Okay, so here's an example. So there has been a difference in the trial balance of $60 with a shortage on the debit side. So the example, the question is trying to tell you that the debit total is lesser than the credit total by 60. So therefore, we need to open a suspense account, putting a $60 debit balance. Okay, and then there has been an initial profit for the year of 1,600. So a suspense account has to be opened to accommodate this. Now, this 1,600 profit is the profit containing errors. Okay. So now these are the errors. There are 4 errors. First error, sales overcast by 70. So sales, as mentioned earlier, is a credit balance account. So this means that the sales account has been over credited by 70. So to correct the situation, you need to debit sales 70. So hence, debit sales 70, credit suspense 70. Next, insurance undercast by 40. So insurance is an expense. So this means that insurance has been under debited by 40. So we need to debit insurance 40 and credit suspense 40. Next, cash of $50 received from a trade receivable entered in the cash book only. So when they use the word entered, whenever they use the word entered, that means entered or posted, that means you have either debited or credited correctly. So in this case, since you are receiving cash, entered here means we have correctly debited the cash account. So there's no mistake there. But that's the only thing we did because they said only. So which means we did not credit the trade receivable account with 50. So to correct the situation, we have to credit the trade receivable 50 and debit suspense 50. Okay, lastly, a purchase of 59 is entered in the books as $95 on both sides. So this means the double entry was there, but the amount was recorded as 95 instead of 59. So this last error here does not require an entry into the suspense account. As long as double entry was there, we do not require any entry into suspense account. Suspense is only required if double entry does not happen. Okay, as in the total debit and the total credit is not the same. So here we have overstated the amount. Okay, we have overstated by 36. So we need to debit trade payables 36 to reduce the liability and credit the purchases 36. So this is how it looked like in the suspense account. As you can see, the totals are the same. So whenever the totals are the same, there is no more balance. So that's what we want to achieve. Okay, so coming back to the statement, to how to calculate the corrected profit. So we have to start with the wrong profit figure given, which is 1,600. Okay, and then we need to do the adjustment, seeing it from profit's point of view. I repeat, profit's point of view. So going back to the journal entries, we have debited sales. So I'm only going to select revenue and expense account. I'm not going to select any other classes other than revenue and expense. So here we have debited sales, so which means we have reduced the revenue. So when you reduce revenue, profit will decrease. So you must only see it from profit's point of view. So this will cause profit to decrease by 70. And then here we have insurance, which is an expense, and I've debited. Debiting insurance means I'm increasing the expense. So when you increase expense, again, profit will decrease by 40. Okay, I will not select this entry because here trade receivable is an asset, so that doesn't affect profit. Okay. And for the last entry, I would not select trade payable because it's a liability, but I will select purchases because purchases affects profit, right? So crediting purchases means we are reducing the purchase cost. So when you reduce the cost, profit will increase. Hence, I put here as add. So 1,600 add 36 minus 110. This will be the corrected profit, 1,526. Okay, that's all for this lecture. Thank you very much.